me, it's the one and only Paul Friends, welcoming you to Starfleet Universe On Call. And tonight, well, you just got me. We have problems with audio, and Barry left because he wasn't going to fight with it. And Lord knows, I find feeling I know why that's what the issue is, and Lord knows if this is the freaking issue, I'm not going to be happy at all, which is that they require Google to do everything, which is a piece of freaking... Don't mind me. I'm not a happy camper when it comes to Google because I do not like Google in any way, shape, or form, but I have to use Google services. If I could drop them off the face of the planet, I would. Unfortunately, I can't. It's just like Facebook. I can't drop them just because that's where everybody freaking is. I don't interact well. I don't interact on my own page. Well, not page, but I don't interact with... I don't post a lot on my main feed. So if you follow me, you ain't gonna... Actually, good luck. I think you can follow me without actually being my friend. That's possible. But if you do, if you're following me on Facebook and not friending me, then you just follow. You're gonna see nothing. Every once in a while I reply to something, but that's a rare thing. Most of my activity is in groups, and that's about it. I don't do much else in Facebook, and the only reason I'm there are for the groups. I'm there for my Starfleet Warlord group, SFU Online group, and now another group which I just signed up for. By the way, hey Chris, I've been working on some cleaning up the FedCom portion of the client. There have been some requests to make things a little closer to SFB, though I have to double check on certain things. As I mentioned to Sebastian, who asked for some of these features, I can do some of those I cannot, because I don't even do those in SF. I don't think I even do those in SFB, which is one of those is just on the launch, fire, that kind of mechanism. Yes, for launching and firing, yes, I actually will denote that you already fired and launched for that turn. Now, obviously, there are certain things that you can fire every impulse, i.e., the ad rack. So that's it's going to be red, but you're going to still be able to fire it. So, if that's one of those rules that's like, okay, well, you can violate it. And again, it's going to be one of those things that, as I said with SFB, I will give you tools to help you not violate, but I still will let you violate because that means I don't have to try to get the rules perfect. I can get them good, but they don't have to be perfect. And obviously the one thing that I don't, when it comes to the tractor and transporter, is that I don't track phaser. Yeah, phaser G2, Chris. Yep. And of course, when it comes to the transporters and the tractors, I don't track those. I don't track those in SFB if you use them or not. It's one of those things that's not used. I don't have a function for it because it's never been necessary. The only thing I do track in the FedCom client, I do track whether you've actually used the transporter that turn, because of I think I have the rules right, because the way it works is that you only pay for transporters once. You use one transporter, then later on you use another transporter. The second time you use a transporter, you don't pay for it again. So, that's the way I understand the rules. I've not actually double checked the rules on it, but I know that's the way the code has worked. And of course, every single turn it resets. But I got that all working fine. Because there were some issues with using the transporters. It wasn't removing the energy from it, and I caught myself again calling older APIs which are not working correctly. I finally said, okay, I got to remove this because this is not good. This should never be called ever, 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 ever. So the only way to make sure you don't ever call it is it doesn't exist. So I did that, and that fixes that up. Hey, Iggy. So that, of course, brings us to what is the topics for tonight? Well, the topics for tonight were going to be... Actually, I had an idea, but that one went out the window when Barry left because I was going to talk about... Actually, I was going to talk about the Designer's Edition again, but I wanted to have... The idea was that I wanted to have his perspective on the changes to the Designer's Edition. That is what I was going for. And since I don't think Dave's here today, I don't see Dave. In fact, I know Dave's not here today. But just different. I don't think usually he tells me he's not gonna be here. Oh well, doesn't matter. But okay, I was gonna do the Designer's Edition and see what his perspective on the Designer's Edition is. So obviously, without Barry here, that went out the window. So don't mind me. I just realized I had the fan on, and Lord knows you probably can hear it in the recording. I apologize early on. I turned it off now so that we won't have the problems in the future. This means I'm going to be a little warm in here. Which is fine because I don't have air conditioning in the office, and that makes things easier because it's a lot quieter. Shocker. But anywho, given that, so actually I came up with an idea, and what I'm hoping is possibly Chris and Iggy might give me some ideas here. Is one of those things that came to my mind because actually I was talking about this to my daughter, which was just stories. Because actually we were watching episode I think it's episode 6. I'm pretty sure it's episode 6 of Mythic season 2 Mythic episode 6 of Mythic Quest. And that episode is kind of a weird episode to be when you start off with because you don't realize who these people are. At least I didn't remember because one of the people is C.W. Longbottom or Charles Longbottom, and so I didn't know, or I didn't remember because I'm really bad with names. That C.W. Longbottom or Charles Longbottom was actually a writer for Mythic Quest. He does all the background material. He writes background stories, continues the scripts and all that kind of things because that's his job. And it was actually the interesting part about that episode. I'm just gonna talk about that just for a moment, which was I thought was cool, which was that, and I'm not that whole idea that someone thought about, in this case C.W. Longbottom, saw ping pong. I'm not sure if anybody's ever actually played Pong. If you ever played Pong, you're pretty old. You're like my age. If you say, what's Pong? Go home, get off my lawn. So is Pong, which is the first video game that you could get for the home. And he envisions basically a modern day MMORG, first person shoot 'em up games, but with the whole story, the whole scenes and characters and so forth, and he imagines this is basically in the it's supposed to be going back in the 1970s, where he imagines this, and then the first reaction, and you can imagine today, if that actually happened to anybody, I'm not sure if anyone actually predicted video games. But first reaction was from these people who are these writers and also an editor, and he said, "You're basically nuts. TVs that's for the boob tubes. They called them boob tubes back then. And I still call it a boob tube. Of course, these days they don't have an actual tube anymore because it's an LCD display. So, boob means basically. Also, they call it the idiot box. Boob or idiot. And because you just sat there and you stared, and that was true because Lord knows the early TV shows and so forth weren't the most engrossing shows like they are today, where they actually have a story which are going through for each episode. They're more episodic in that you did an episode, you had a issue that they had at the beginning that was presented at the beginning of the show, and by the end of the show it was resolved. Every once in a while you get a two-parter, but that was it, because of the whole idea is that you could replay. You wouldn't record you'd record so many episodes, and then you could actually replay them on the basically the quote unquote off season. So you're always having it, but every once in a while you do reruns is what you do of those episodes. And that'd be fine. Of course, then you had the whole what's it called? Like now you can play MASH. You can watch MASH. It could be syndicated. That's it, syndicated. So which I thought was an interesting idea. At least the reaction I thought was interesting because of it. And basically Charles, Peter, and Anne. Well, they're going to be these three. They were grow up and be these grand writers, and the only one that really had any real talent was Anne. She had the most talent of all of them. And then we find out that Peter marries Anne, and then Peter, basically we find out through the whole story. Actually, I read, but anyway, so there were three friends, and then there was a fallout between them, and that's the conflict that is played forth in this episode. But the point was, we were talking. Me and my daughter were talking about how hard it is to write a story, and writing a story with the characters and the background and all that. Because Lord knows I suck at writing stories. I really do. Can I write down ideas? Yeah, I can write down ideas. I can write down designs. I can write down designs. Could I write up a scenario? Possibly. Minor bit of writing there, but some background and things like that. I could set up. I could set it up. This is will be maybe a little larger than what actually is happening in the scenario. Why does this, i.e., why does the scenario occur? Why is this this lone ship out in the middle of space going from point A to point B? And all of a sudden they run into, this squadron of ships or something along those lines. Why are they out there? Or why do they have to fight? Because usually there has to be a reason. Because, for example, let's say for a scenario, you've got one ship against three. Big surprise, asymmetric, but the obvious, what are, with that kind of asymmetric, the victory conditions are two different things. In that case, for the single ship, it might be just to escape going off like the opposite end of the board, because of the key here is that he has to escape to tell whoever, or get this person or whatever, or maybe in cargo, to this certain place. And that's the only reason he's even going to try to get around them, because it's time sensitive. So it's not like, instead of, I see ships on a distance and I don't know if they're friendly or foe, so I'm going turn away. Now, of course, if you think about that, if you have a squadron of ships and you have another ship that you see and it turns away from you, you're automatically going to go towards it. So, you know, it's one of those things that. So, in other words, there'll be a conflict anyway, because they're gonna try to stop them. So, in the case of the squadron, it would be either capture or destroy the ship. And in the case of the other ship, it's just to escape, not to fight them. So in other words, you'd be fighting a delay. Delaying action. You might be launching drones or plasma, whatever, seeking weapons you can, and you keep running. You don't try to face off with them. Because this is asymmetric. You will lose. You will lose in that kind of scenario. If it's one against three is, though it depends upon the three. For all could be roving PF squadron, which is basically taking in patrol duty. Checking out, make sure that you don't have any enemy ships, trying to sneak through, because, starbases can only do so much. They're a fixed position, and you might want to find out what's going on out there. The sensors can only be so sensitive in a starbase, because you might even see a ship, but you don't know, is that a friend or foe? You don't know, because Lord knows. If you think about it, in wartime, you don't want to have each starbase to know everything about what is going to even be close to it. Because if that starbase is ever captured, that information is invaluable. Because I'm sure any one of you who's actually watched the Clone Wars, there was an episode where R2-D2, he gets captured. And why is he so valuable? Because instead of doing which is protocol, which is wiping the droid after each mission, he doesn't do that. Well, that, of course, R2-D2 has all this information, which the Empire is interested in, because of it's got, basically strategic plans for the rebels, and it's like, okay, or not for the rebels, but actually in that case they're clones, so they're on the side of the Empire versus the I forgot what the other side was called in the Clone Wars. I think the Alliance or something like that. But it's very, for the opposite side, it's very useful information. So that's the whole same situation. If you capture a starbase or any other base. Of course, my favorite starbase, I forget, it was in the captain's log, and I'm sure Chris will remember it. Probably better than I will remember. It's an older one, where basically, I think the title of the story was "Stand Until Relieved." So basically, stay there. Fight as best you can until you're relieved. Well, that just means that they're not going to help you. And the stand until relieved is interesting, because basically the starbase commander basically sets it up as a booby trap. And shuts down things, has all quiet. And then it was it was a battle station. Okay, thanks, Chris. I know it was a base of some sort. I forget which kind, but thank you. And that one I thought that was one of my favorites, just because of, you don't realize what is going on until they get to the command center. The computers activate. Fire control turns on. All of a sudden, all of the phaser 4s, they fire on the ship and the ship is destroyed. Because of, it's all friendly. The shields aren't up or anything like that, so it goes boom. And then the last, I think, if I recall correctly, the last line of it, and the dragon slumbers. In other words, all the systems then shut down again, and all is quiet for that battle station again until the next ship comes. Which then it's like, okay, well, they come here and they find a destroyed ship. It's like, okay, what happened here? You know? And again, probably the battle station will be nice and quiet and probably do the same thing because there was no distress signal. You know? Obviously, there was a distress signal for the battle station because of it's an automated message that gets sent out that, you know, we're under attack, that SOS and so forth. But to me, that was a very, very, very interesting. It's one of my favorite stories in the captain's logs. You know, given that, what I was thinking about doing, and I'll see how well it goes because we've got around 30 more minutes or so with the podcast. If it goes well, maybe we'll continue on at another time. If it doesn't go well, we can just say, okay, this was an experiment that failed. Because it's called being light on your feet. Because Lord knows, the whole reason my topic kind of went out the window when Barry went out the window. So, the idea here is to come up with an outline of a story. And doesn't have to be a complete story. It just have to be, the idea here is to come up with some points, i.e., in the case of, you know, background material, characters, things like that. Because that was one thing I talked to my daughter about, and she said, that she can't write. Well, I'm willing to bet she can write. She just needs to practice at it. But the one thing that when she was younger, one thing she loved to do, it was one of her favorite things to do of all times, is to basically create up characters and backstories, which I think would actually be fantastic if she did that. You know, basically see if she could get hired by maybe a gaming studio, maybe not as a graphical artist though. That's what she was trained at. You know, video and that kind of thing. But, you know, creating characters, you know, whether it's a bit character, you know, minor character that the players interact with, or even the players themselves, because, you know, the players themselves sometimes have backstories. If you've ever I'm just remembering 3 Moves Ahead, and the whole idea of some of the games that they play, invariably, you know, they'll have one of the things that they point out that they want so much is the feeling of actually caring about the characters, of caring about the people that they are basically pushing around as their pawns. And I think that would be great for her, you know. I'm not sure if anyone's looking for that kind of thing, you know. And I'm not sure she might still have them. I know it was a Tumblr account. Like, I'd have to double check to see if she still has them. Because if I was her, I'd take them off Tumblr and put them someplace else so she have a stored collection. Because you never know when Tumblr might go bye bye. And I'm not sure, she might have deleted her account by now. Or she might have forgotten what her account is. But anyway, okay, so let's maybe the chat room here can help me with some ideas, because I'm open to it. But in the meantime, let me here. Okay. Da-da-da. And but I'm not sure I think I'll do it this way. Let me go like this. Okay. And so that you guys can see this. Actually, I'm wondering. Let me just. Nah. Let's see if that will work. View. That's what I wanted. Full screen. Okay. Let's see how that all works out. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that you guys could actually see this. That's weird. Okay, so I was going to say wrong. So let's call it new story. I'm not worried about titles, because you create a title after. There's two different ways I feel like that you can do a story. You can create a title and then try to base a story after the title, which I think is backwards. Or you can create the story and then from the story you can then say, okay, what does fits this beautiful story they created? Maybe there's a point in the story where it's like, okay, I know what the title is going to be, and then so that you have, because after you've got a good structure in place, then you can go for there. Now, I am not a writer, so if I got it all wrong, please tell me. Feel free to criticize me in any way, shape, or form, because I am not a writer again. But I figured this might be a cool exercise for tonight. To obviously, we already have some of the background material, but okay. So we're gonna start. Okay, guys, in the chat room, can you read what I'm writing? Just because if not, I will see if I can. I'm thinking about. There, I think. Okay, that looks a little better. I think that might be a little bit more viewable. Okay, I think I can read that much better now. I have my iPad right here, so I can see what it is on the screen. Now, okay, we already have some part of the background material, because background is definitely going to be SFU. It's going to be Starfleet Universe. Okay, that's a pretty broad stroke right there, but it does give us certain things that we already know about. We know, okay, basically it's kind of Star Trek. It's Star Trek based. So, we know some of the technology that's available. The transporters, tractors, warp ships that have warp drive. Now, it doesn't mean that obviously within Andromedans they have other ways of moving, like the Rin, if I recall correctly, that's correct. The Rin, though, have a way of moving, which wasn't. It was using transport technology to go from one point to bum, 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 bum. So it doesn't mean it has to be only by movement through space through using warp technology. But we'll stick with that at the moment, so it's not too far out there. Another background material. So, where is this? Is this in the Federation? Is it in the Klingon Empire? Is it in the Hydran Empire? Is it the Romulans, Gorns, ISC? Forget ISC. I think about ISC and go, no. Just because of, I understand ISC would be kind of interesting in that ISC has so many different races that make up the Empire, that it can make things very interesting. Of course, the problem is I don't know much about those races, so ISC goes out the window. Obviously, the easiest one is it's one for the Federation, possibly the Klingons, possibly the Lyrians or Zinni, possibly the Gorns. Those are relatively, possibly even the Tholians. Though the toughest part about, in my mind, of having the characters be Tholian, because I'm assuming that it's a story about the war. Now the question is, or maybe let's start with something small. A particular. I'm not gonna say a whole battle. I'm gonna say a mission at the moment. It's a small. Let's start small. Chris, that would not surprise me. Chris is saying there's of the capsule number 35. There's only one story with Hydrogen characters. Is that the one with the masters? And that one I think the Hydras were mentioned, but that's about it for that one. But I don't. I know there was one. Yeah, there definitely was one where they actually had hydrants. Okay. Yeah, yeah. With the ones with the masters in it, um, the hydrant was mentioned but never ever seen. I mean, so it wasn't kind of an active character. So anyway, so let's give a good one for. Okay, got an idea. The question is, okay, well, actually, what I'm thinking about is Federation. That's a question. I was thinking about the Federation / Klingon DMZ. This is before the General War started. Is the whole idea. But the problem is, a lot of stories actually have that as a backdrop, which is the Federation Klingon DMZ. So that leaves, if I want to use the Federation, that means either Federation Klingons or possibly Federation Tholian. Possibly. But there's no reason for the Federation to. Well, there is one possibility. If you go for the Federation Tholian, which is the Federation just not attacking the Tholians, but investigating the Tholians. What are they doing? Because they're all closed up to themselves. They don't want, they really don't want to chat with anybody. They don't want to be alliance with anybody. They just want to be off to themselves. Leave them alone. That's what they want. Which is to me when it comes to the Tholians. The Tholians always were interesting to me in that the Tholians come from their home galaxy to the Milky Way. Okay, they make it. They have to really, it takes a long time. They have to basically use some ships for parts to get them there. Now, the one thing that always is funny to me is that they come to the Milky Way, basically take up residence. No one really notices at first, anyway. But the thing that really I always found interesting about the Tholians was that the Tholians come with some advanced technology. Got the web generators, which obviously until the Neo-Tholians come, they're not much use when it comes. When the Neo-Tholians come, now there's a real threat, because the webs at that point, with the web generators, they're a defensive only weapon. You can't use them for offense. It's not until the Neo-Tholians come that you can actually use the web for offensive movement. But they have this advanced technology in the case of definitely the phaser ones, which in theory, if you think about this for a moment, in theory the phaser ones aren't phaser ones. because of, and the phaser ones that the Tholians had are they're more advanced. They come at a point in time when there were no phaser ones, basically. But the Tholians come with these advanced weapons, and unfortunately, I guess the reasoning behind it is that basically you've got civilians who don't know how to actually build ships. They don't have to design ships. They have automated factories which can build the ships, and that's how they create things like the destroyer, where they attach multiple of these kind of PC hulls together to create another ship, a larger ship. But other than that, they can't advance the technology that they're there for decades. Which to me just seems weird. I mean, that no one could figure out in decades how to improve the technology which they had in their hands for longer than them. And as I pointed out, the phaser ones aren't phaser ones. At least to me, they can't be phaser ones. They can't be the same because they're from another galaxy. It's just like when they mention about the Andromedas and the phaser 2s. The phaser 2s aren't phaser 2s. Phaser 2s, they call them phaser 2s for the Andromedans because they're a close simile to a phaser 2. Then, and I'm assuming, my assumption there is that the Tholians, same way. They come to this galaxy with these what looks like phasers, but they're not really phasers. They're a close approximation to phasers, which is interesting. Of course, because it would be really weird if they actually created phasers in a galaxy far, far away. And yes, and they come in and they they don't, and they don't improve it, But anyway, it would be it would be very strange if a galaxy far away they create phaser ones, and then we create phaser ones, and they go, hey, they're the same. That would be very, very weird. It's just like, actually, you really think about it. The phaser ones that are Klingon phaser ones and the phaser ones that are Federation phaser ones, I'm willing to bet you that, yeah, they might use the same base technology, but they have their own little quirks. It's like building, a Ferrari versus a Lamborghini. They're both high performance cars. They both have engines in them, but I'm willing to bet those engines are built quite a bit differently. They all have their little quirks. But anyhow, okay. So what the heck? I kind of like that idea. So let's say Federation Tholian border. It's gonna be the back. It's gonna be part of the background. This is gonna be something that's gonna be happening on the Federation Tholian border. Now, I'm I don't remember. And if you guys could help me out here, that'd be great. Which is, I don't remember if the Federation ever set up any battle stations along the Tholian border. Or did they just trust the Tholians not to be aggressive? Basically trust that what they understand of the Tholians, that the Tholians are just going to not do anything. They're not going to attack. My guess is no. I'm sorry. If you're not going to talk to us and you just want to be left alone, that's fine. But at the same time, we can't trust you. Heck, I'm not sure if when it comes to the border with the Gorns, if they actually had a battle station, or not along the Federation border. with them, you know. But even if they don't have battle stations, they at least have some base stations, some outposts. Because Lord knows, we all know that one of the things that the Klingons and the Romulans did is they would skirt basically the border between the Federation and the Tholian border to get around the Tholians. Not the idea was that that's one way of they could one support each other when it comes to ships and logistics, and a way also communicating from long distances, which is always an interesting thing you think about interstellar space. And you know the idea of communicating through, because that's one thing that they're explaining in Star Trek is how does the Enterprise, which is many hundreds of light years away, possibly thousands of light years away, how does it communicate back home? You know, even if we say there's a time delay, how does it do it? You know, what is the quote unquote technology that should be able to do this? I don't know, because as I mentioned before, there's this one this one sci-fi where what they did was they used messenger drones, which would go through these warp points, bump, 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 and to carry messages. And it was a completely automated system. They even had within, you know, you'd have an actual base of these. Well, what it would do is to take the messenger drones, automated way of taking the messengers, take the contents of the messenger drone, put another messenger drone, and then send it all its merry way. You know, and it'd be very secure when it did that. So, anyway, okay. So SFU, Federation border. So, what? Okay. What is okay? Do we? What's going to be the story? Okay. So we got those 2 points. So let's go characters. So and it's going to be a short story, possibly even, you know, something that could fit into a captain's log, possibly create into a scenario, because it's going to be a captain's log, you have to create a scenario for. And that is, when I'm thinking of the basis of the story, the general outline, the general thing of the story is that, okay, it's a background, because the story I want to tell. Let's go with the general story at the moment, because I got an idea, which is, okay, it's a mission. It's only 1C. Okay, across. Federation mission across the Tholian border to investigate gate. Yeah, close enough. The Tholians. I misspelled this. Tholians. Basically, the idea is that, okay, Okay. Say Commodore. X sends Captain Y and his team to secretly secretly get intel on the phone. So the idea of the story, to start off with, at least the basic idea of the story, which of course there's a lot of details that still need to be put into this, but the idea is that you got, there's the Commodore X, however his name is going to be, sends Captain Y and his team across the Tholian border on a secret mission. The whole idea is you cannot be caught by the Tholians. You have to somehow to secretly cross into Tholian territory and find out as much about the Tholians as possible without having them know who you are. Obviously, in theory, you could try to pay the Orions to do this, which is something that is going to probably be brought up in the conversations between the characters. Why do we have to send a team? Aren't the Tholians our allies? And they say, well, they're not really our allies, but they just want to be left alone. Things like that. But that's part of the whole conversation that leads them, to it. And of course, part of the general story is going to have to be, okay. So now we know what the team Captain Y is going to be doing. We're still going to be going across the border to investigate trying to get intel on the Tholians. Now, obviously, there's going to have to be someone higher up than the Commodore to say, okay, we need to have more intel on the Tholians. The question: how far up do we go? Do we go all the way up to the Senate? I think it's the Senate. I have to look into a little more about the governance of the Federation. But the whole idea being that, we can't trust the Tholians. We can't trust what they're saying. They're saying, "Oh, just leave us alone." But the Tholians are being very secretive about what their plans are. They say, "Just leave us alone." Well, that's fine and all, but how do we know that you're not saying leave us alone so we can cook up this crazy plan about taking over this galaxy because we're from another galaxy? So we want this galaxy to be ours. We want to remake this galaxy into the way ours was, where we were top dogs, which at this point they don't know. No one knows, because at this point, no one knows the history of the Tholians. So they just know that they are refugees from another galaxy. That's about, I think that's all they would know. Or at the very least, they know they're extragalactic in nature. And everything else would have to be supposition. Do we know they're, well, at the same time, if they said they're refugees, can we believe them that they're refugees? We don't know. And that's why we need to send people in across the Tholian border on a secret mission that's supposed to be really hush hush, so much so that it's what might happen is that um, you know Admiral Z S Commodore X to send a team. The Senate / governmental body does not know about this. The idea is that the admiral, and probably talking with other admirals, they kind of agree that how do we know that they're purely a passive race? How do we know that the Tholians aren't going to someday attack? They don't know. And they want to find out what are their capabilities, how many, not, they might not know how many initially, but they want to at least know more information. Because let's start small. Let's start, cross the border. Let's see what we can find about what they've set up so far. Try to get as far as you can into Tholian territory that, where you think, as safe as possible, because if you think at some point that the jig is up, you want to get out of there and get back so you can relay the information. Back to to his higher ups, Captain Y. So now, so we have a general outline of a story here, in my mind. And I said this is a short story. This is not long. Obviously, if this is going to be a novel, the whole idea is you have a lot of this. We're talking about the context of prepare. The possibility of war. Even if we're not attacking anyone, no one's attacking us. We need to be preparing for the possibility of war, or at the very least have the intel, so if war does break out, we're not caught with our caught off guard. So, and that's one of the things of this is, and that could be obviously a larger novel about this, and this is just one aspect to it. Some of the characters which are already identified. Commodore X, Captain Y, and see, obviously, some of the characters you have to expand on is like the team, Captain Y's team. Who makes up the team? Obviously, the team's going to need to be small. So, and the question, and of course, after we come up with what his team is, if the people that are going to be making up his team, what are their background material? What's their background story? Maybe that that it comes. This is always the most difficult part in my mind about background story. When it comes to writing, you can, in theory, there's a certain amount of leeway you can get where you actually can write out a person's backstory to a certain degree. You don't want to put too much in there, because the whole idea of a story is that you want to develop this affinity to the characters. And the way you do that is not a whole like brain dump of here's the big background story for this character. The idea is that you discover the background of this character from interactions with the different characters to a certain degree. Obviously, some cases it's just flat out because we're writing this. This is not a screenplay. So a screenplay, you're limited in that regard, which in my mind is where screenplays lose some of the things that you can do in an actual written book. A written book, you actually can go and say, okay, this is some background for this person. They grew up, with poor on the farm, back on Earth, in the middle of Ohio, what's once was called Ohio. Whatever. But that's certain things that you can get away with in a book you can't do in screenplay. In screenplay, there has to be more interaction between like two characters, maybe more characters, so that is discovered through that interaction. So there's a big difference that's why there's a big difference between a screenplay and a novel or a story. A story you can get away with describing a lot more background material in a short period of time. Which is why, have you ever looked at some of the book to movie conversions where they have a screenplay? The screenplay itself, they have to chop things out. Why? Because to have it so that actually is explained is a lot longer. Actually, the funny part is that they're coming out with Dune very soon. I'm not sure how soon, but I saw a trailer for another version of Dune, and I heard someone comment about that, and the one thing that I think they got right is Dune is not a movie. Dune is a series. Because there's so much material there, so much story there, that it can't even be done in like a 2 or 3 hour movie. It has to be done, 8 to 16 hours of viewing, to possibly longer, to tell the full story that's in the books. So, anyhow, I think I will wrap up for the evening. This is a start. Now, we might continue on this or not, but it's not. I like the general start of our story. So with that, I am Paul Franz, and I bid you a good night.